I was looking at this picture here, which shows the size of a drone relative to another object, which
an
is a
F-150.
car. So I guess there was two questions, which is like, where do they hide these,
Mhm.
and how easy is it to make one of these drones?
So they hide those drones, Stephen, everywhere. Okay. They're in drone caverns, they're in warehouses, they're everywhere. They could be, so that drone, just to kind of give you a sense here, would easily fit in this room. But the reason this is so difficult is notice how small that is here, that drone.
Oh yeah, guys, you got any question, comments, jokes, or disagreements? Feel free to super chat it in, or if you just want to see Dancing G again, I mean, you could do that as well. Also, send in the GIF if you also want to do that as well. Okay, guys, appreciate the support. Let's keep it going. Oh, and make sure to double tap that screen, like the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already.
Compared to the scale of where it could be. And this is what I really want to show you, because this is, I think, the hardest part to explain to people as I'm talking in whatever format I'm talking, is it's the scale of eliminating the drone and missile threat is much bigger than people realize, because they're hearing measurements. Well, we've destroyed X percent and Y percent. And that's why you're getting the question. But if you look at this map, this is what where these drones, these Shahed 136, could literally be anywhere in this radius, 500-mile area. And notice how huge this area is. This area like this is bigger than California.
Yeah.
It's 1.5 times the size of California.
So I guess it's like trying to find a truck in California.
It's like trying to find a truck in California. These little things.
It's like, yo, literally though, it's like, it's really hard to actually get all these trucks and find all these underground facilities and these missile launch sites that they're popping in and going in and out of. Yeah, it's literally like stretching all through California looking for the right target. It's a pretty hard task.
Here are the Shahed drones.
Yeah.
Okay. And what we're doing in this area, which is mountainous. So this is why we have a 3-dimensional. It's not just a 2-dimensional problem. It's a 3-dimensional problem.
We'll show some of these visuals on screen now, just to show what the terrain, where they're hiding these drones might be like.
They could be anywhere in these mountains. There's all kinds.
It's like, can you, bro? Yeah, anywhere in these mountains they firing their missiles from. They got their facilities anywhere under these mountains in southern Iran. Do you see why it's such a problem, guys?
In where they're hiding these drones might be like.
They could be anywhere in these mountains. There's all kinds of, and if we kind of imagine this as a visual, so this is the general problem here we have, which is just this stuff could be anywhere. And now these are the drones. And this is the terrain that the drones are going to hide in. And notice I've just sprinkled some here, but now I'm going to cover these up with more terrain. And notice you can't see those drones anymore. And now I'm going to put in some more drones somewhere else. And now we're going to put another layer in. And this is again, it's the 3-dimensional part of the problem, meaning hard to find from the air. Now, if I get my people out and I start going in, now I could start to dig them out. But let's just keep doing this for a while. So now I'm putting in another, say, 20 drones, and I'm going to cover it yet again. And then I'm going to put in another set of drones, and I'm covering it yet again.
I guess you could put all the drones in there and you would still be able to cover them.
You would, yes, but you wouldn't do it you do it in layers. So they're going to make it so that if you find one, you're going to have to work really hard. You have to get them drone by drone by drone, or at least in clusters of them.
I guess also an important point of context is they're also making new ones this whole time.
Exactly. So our estimates that we have leaked from the Pentagon are in April. That's months ago. These drones, they were making 55,000 a year and giving them to Russia. So just think about that. That's thousands every single month. Why haven't they made another 5 or 10,000 drones since April? If you want this to open, so let me
the Strait of Hormuz.
The Strait of Hormuz. So now let me just explain. So this is our problem. If you want the Strait,
it's wild because Iran's manufacturing capability is what our manufacturing capability should be. Like that's just a sad reality right there.
of Hormuz to open, it's not good enough to say, oh, look, I've found like dozens or hundreds of these drones. You've got to persuade the shipping companies that their ships are safe. They don't obey orders from the Pentagon. You can't order the shippers to go through.
Because the ships are expensive.
The ships are expensive.
How
and
expensive?
The crews don't want to, in the many millions and millions of dollars. I don't know the exact amount of these tankers, but each tanker will carry between 700,000 and over 1 million barrels of oil. And so they have quite and you can do the math right there to see how much each ship is worth carrying that much oil.
I was looking at the cost here. It says when you combine a brand new vessel with a full tank of oil, a single tank crossing the Strait of Hormuz is a floating asset worth 300 million.
Oh, wow. See, I didn't, I learned something from you every time.
It's ranged from like 300 to 500 million dollars that these tankers are worth, like, tanker and product included.
And that's not even the lives on board, which again are going to cause an insurance problem, but also no one wants people to die.
Well,
the lives. I mean, if you include the lives, that makes it priceless. I mean, if you want to be real.
They don't want to die. So you're going to have mutant. They're not going to. So this is why you're seeing more ships leaving than you're seeing ships come in. And the ships that are coming in are very heavily coming to Iran's ports. That's one of the reasons President Trump put the blockade back on. It's because what happened here is the MOU, this whole idea is not opening up the Strait of Hormuz. It's not preventing what's going to come in the next few weeks, maybe month, which is the world economic crisis. We are knocking on the door of what President Trump told us he was trying to avoid, which is the world literally running out of oil. And just today, before we started, the Houthis, which big ally of Iran. So just to come back here and re-show the map, remember I said that once the Strait of Hormuz became shut down, there was 2 million of barrels coming out every day through, for the UAE, coming out through Fujairah, and then 4 to 5 million coming out from Saudi Arabian oil going out to the Red Sea. And this is the port there at the Red Sea. Well, the Houthis have just shut this down literally today.
Oh, really?
Literally before we came on. It happened about 6 hours.
But he pretty much put a blockade on Saudi Arabian, Saudi Arabia ships. Like, the Saudi Arabian vessels, they put blockades on them, and they're even firing at them. So it's kind of getting real out there in the Red Sea. But the other ships are able to go through, just not Saudi Arabia. So it's a naval blockade on Saudi Arabia.
Ago. This has been escalating for several weeks. Iran's been asking for this. This is part of the general escalation that we're seeing.
Okay, so we've got the Strait of Hormuz closed. We've got the Houthis closing
the Red
Sea. So there's no oil flowing through there.
Yeah.
So are we on the verge of an economic crisis if things don't change quickly?
Yes. This is literally the nightmare scenario that we've been worrying about. And the reason is this. Go back and let's think about this from the 20 million barrels of oil that was going through the Strait of Hormuz. So when Iran gained control of the Strait of Hormuz, what happened immediately is the Saudi Arabia and the UAE started to bypass Hormuz with 7 million barrels.
All right, let me go ahead and answer this question, Vega, because that's actually a pretty good question. He's like, all right, my biggest question is that they have drones, rockets, enriched uranium. Why haven't they got the nukes yet after so many years? Oh, because the Ayatollah pretty much, which is basically their religious leader, put down a fatwa, a religious law, saying that it is a sin against God to make a nuke. And they did that since, 2004, 2006. And they've kept that up for about 20 years. And we have not been able to find no trace of no nuclear weapons program or any type of nuke being created. So, that's one of the reasons that, they haven't went after it, because the religious fatwa was put down that, we're not going to go towards a nuke. It's a sin against God. And that was the old Ayatollah that laid that down. So I'm not sure if Iran still holds that value anymore or still holding up to the fatwa. So, and we're going to see, because let's be real, like, since the only reason why they are at 60% enrichment was to pretty much deter the United States. Because what they were telling us was that, look, if you attack us, we're going to progress towards a nuke. If you don't attack us, we'll just keep it here at this 60%. And sadly, we took on the challenge of saying that, well, I guess we can knock you guys out before you guys even enrich. And here we are. And also close down the Strait and attack our bases.
Barrels a day. So that means only 13 million at issue, right? That's helpful. The next is the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, the United States. And we started to release about 5 or 6 million barrels a week through the strategic oil.
When?
We started to do this. It's right around the middle of March. I can't remember the exact date, but notice that you put a big dent in that. And so that's one of the reasons the oil markets did not go crazy right away.
So I've got some data here then. It says President Trump authorized the emergency release of 172 million barrels of oil from the strategic reserve designed to be pumped out over roughly 120 days. This wasn't just a US issue or the US acting alone. The US drawdown was part of a massive coordinated effort by 32 member nations of the International Energy Agency, who collectively agreed to release 400 million barrels from their emergency stockpiles. Because these massive releases were done to offset the Hormuz blockade, the US strategic reserve has been heavily depleted.
Yeah, I mean, everybody depleting their strategic reserves right now because the war is still going and the Strait of Hormuz is still closed. And a lot of people, not only the world, but the US is dumping their strategic reserves. And China, I mean, they got plenty of strategic reserves. And also, they've also cut down about 40% of their imports to pretty much stop the price from increasing on the global stage or the global market.
And as of July 2026, the reserve has dropped down to roughly 300 million barrels, which marks the lowest level the reserve has since 1983, a more than 40-year low.
They're being depleted. Once you spend your reserve, you don't get it refilled. And that's what I think President Trump was talking about when he said we're about to run out of oil in 4 weeks. That was exactly the date, because we've just run to the date of that quote. What you just read is we're coming to about the 120th day. And so what that means is all of that cushion that we had in the system to protect the price of gas already went up. Now you have even more risk. And then on top of that, Stephen, we have another set of problems besides the oil itself, which is refining capacity in the world. So we don't put crude oil in our cars. We put gasoline in our cars, diesel as well. Well, how do you get the gas and the diesel? You refine the crude. So that means the refineries need to work. Well, where are much of the world's refineries? In the Persian Gulf. Not just oil comes through the Persian Gulf, refined product, they're called distillates. They come through the Persian Gulf as well. Now, so that means you've shut down something like 25% or a third of the world's refining capacity. Now let's marry this to what's happening with Russia and Ukraine's blasting Russia refineries in Russia. So what's happening, Stephen, is you are getting not just the decline of crude itself is about to run out, but the refining capacity now has been heavily strained and limited. It might be down, 40%. I don't know the exact number, but it's something on that order. And what you're seeing then is what I think President Trump was seeing a month ago, which is he wanted the Strait of Hormuz to open, but he also didn't want to own the L. And what President Trump has decided is he'd rather take the risk with the world's economy than own the L, own the loss.
Oh, literally.
And maybe
No, that is like literally the case here. It's like instead of owning the loss, just taking the L and just walking all this back. Yeah, I mean, he'd rather just risk the entire global economy and our dollar. It's like, hey, yo, like wildest ego trip in history.
change his mind.
Well, all right. And how about in modern era? In modern era, because in history is a bit crazy. We've had crazier ego trips.
Do you mean he'd rather take the risk with the world's economy than just own the L? So what would owning the L look like in this scenario?
Owning the L would allow Iran to follow through with Article 5. So if we go back to Article 5.
To control the Strait.
To control the Strait on its terms.
But that would be a set of precedents for all of these straits.
Yes.
Around the world.
That's exactly right.
And you can't have that.
Well, these are the choices we have, Stephen. So the choice is, do we have a global economic crisis possibly recession, possibly worse? Or do we let Iran control the Strait of Hormuz?
This is not a good place to be.
Well, that's the fork in the road that I was telling you was the stage 3 dilemma. So that's exactly where we were in March. So Stephen, just to explain to your audience, because they're trying to figure out how are we getting here, this is what the 20 years of modeling was really showing. We would very quickly get to this fork in the road. It wouldn't take months and months. It would happen right away. And President Trump has been trying to avoid the escalation trap. This is called an escalation trap. And he's been trying to avoid that trap. He tried to avoid it with bombing for 6 weeks. He tried to avoid it with the blockade. He tried signing the MOU. He let J.D. Vance offer money, and that none of those were actually working. And where he is now is still at this fork in the road, the dilemma of the escalation trap. Either he owns the loss, which it means everything you just said, and becomes known as the president who allowed not just the Strait of Hormuz to be controlled, but set a precedent for other countries and other non-state actors to control their choke points. Or we have we take it back physically. Are we going to physically take it back?
So we'll go through the stages in the escalation trap straight away after we move on from this point around oil, because I think some of my audience might not know that this escalation trap is historically predictable and that you've been talking about this for a long time. And it also allows us to understand exactly what happens next. I was quite shocked when you just said that Trump said recently that the US would run out of oil within 4 weeks. So I just looked down at some research here, and it says that during a recent press conference at the G7 summit in June 2026, President Trump made a blunt admission about how dangerously low global energy oil stockpiles have become due to the ongoing crisis in the Strait of Hormuz. His direct quote was, "We run out of reserves at about 4 weeks. You know, there are reserves all over the world, and we would run really low. We would run out, and there'll be a time when you wouldn't be able to get it. It would be bedlam."
Yes.
Why is he saying that? Doesn't that make him look bad?
It makes him, he's being, I think, forthright in why he signed the MOU, which is to avoid that bedlam, the world economic crisis. However, the problem for...
He said a lot of things in that address. It was kind of wild. He pretty much said, our strategic reserve is running low, and I'm not trying to cause a whole depression. And then also he was like, well, look, guys, we can't get Iran to give up their missiles and say that Saudi Arabia and Israel could have missiles. So he basically said that Iran has a right to defend themselves, which was hilarious. So it's just like, all right, we can't keep going into this war because we can cause an economic depression, and Iran has a right to defend themselves. It was kind of funny.
President Trump is, in order to avoid the bedlam, he has to let Iran control the Strait of Hormuz, establish that sphere of influence I was explaining. And he, almost immediately after he said that statement, within 48 hours, undermined that MOU that would have avoided that. Had the MOU just been implemented as written, we may not be sitting here today talking about the impending world crisis. And I believe one of the reasons we're knocking on the door of more escalation right now is because President Trump is desperate to open the Strait of Hormuz. I think he's taking high risk military option. I think he's pursuing military options he likely knows are unlikely to work, but they're his best chance to open Hormuz before the crisis literally hits.
But there's also another before, which is the midterm elections.
Yes.
Am I right in thinking that this midterm election takes place in 3 months' time? And if his approval rating is low at that point because of what's going on with the war, because when Americans go to the pump to fill up their cars, they notice the prices are way higher than usual. That means those Americans in the midterm elections will vote for the Democrats, which means he will lose the Congress. So he basically needs to make sure Americans are happy in 3 months' time.
He needs to take the best chance he can to make that happen.
Okay.
And I think that what happened here, Stephen, is his quote, you just quoted him, I think it was June 17th. He's saying that within a month, those reserves are going to run out, and we're heading to that bedlam, that economic crisis, and that is already happening. 4 weeks later, we're right on that trajectory. That trajectory has not changed. Maybe we bought an extra week or two of time because some oil did get out from the Persian Gulf. Not that much, but enough for a few weeks here. So maybe it's going to now not fall on August 1st. Maybe it'll be August, say 15th or 17th. But it will hit. And that's what he was. And now I think he sees when it hits, he's going to lose. There's a good chance that the Republicans will lose more seats in the House and in the Senate. That will make him the lamest of lame ducks for his last 2 years. It may not be that he would be removed from office. That's probably not going to happen. But it could be that he will be impeached again. He will be tied in knots by the Democratic-controlled House or Democratic-controlled House and Senate. And this is what he's trying to offset. But he knows something that
he's going to be forced to concede on a lot
of us, I think, are not really taking seriously, which is that the world is we're like on the Titanic and we're about to hit the iceberg. And maybe that iceberg moved a little bit further away, but we're still right on the trajectory to hit that iceberg. And it's coming. And when the iceberg hits, there's not enough lifeboats for everybody. And who's going to be short of lifeboats? The Republicans. And that's why I think people made the mistake when they said, well, President Trump couldn't possibly escalate before the midterms. Couldn't possibly. For weeks, Stephen, I've been on shows talking about, why President Trump will escalate maybe after the midterms, maybe next year, but and I kept trying to explain that's probably not right. And that's what you're seeing now. You're seeing that President Trump is desperate to try to open the Strait of Hormuz. He, I think, is being told probably directly from his military, these options are very low risk. They're very high risk. They're very unlikely to succeed. But now that the Titanic is going to hit the iceberg, his only other choice is to completely walk back and say, you're right, Iran. You control Hormuz. You set the fees. You don't have to make any limits on your nuclear program. You are the fourth center of world power. And Donald Trump, it happened under my watch. That's a big L to wear on your chest, Stephen. And that would be true, I think, for any president. This is what Lyndon Johnson faced in Vietnam.
This will led to the drag out of Vietnam because Lyndon Johnson just could not take an L.
Now have the tapes that Johnson was making in the White House in conversations. It wasn't just Nixon making tapes here. Johnson was making tapes. And we now have tapes of Johnson as he's making decisions to escalate the Vietnam War, explaining that he knows this is very unlikely to end the war. It's likely to make it worse. And why is he doing it? He's doing it because he's trying to hold on to his Great Society program just for another 4 or 5 months. And what he's hoping is that even though the escalation is likely not to work, there's some tiny chance it will. And in 4 or 5 months, he'll be able to pull a rabbit out of the hat. He became, it failed domestically. Lyndon Johnson had to pull back from running for re-election because of the escalations in the Vietnam War. And President Trump is running the same risk, that even though I believe that he's doing this because he's trying to give himself and the Republicans the best chance to win in November, it may not work. That's why I think President Trump already planted the seed of China meddling in the elections. He's already started the conversation that there's another possible stolen election in our future. This time,
yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's like, oh no, we might lose the midterms because China isn't interfering in our elections. Like, or you could have just started a war that nobody wanted, and it caused a lot of damage on the American people. And now you're going to pay for it in the midterms. It has nothing to do with China. It has everything to do with your leadership at that point. So sorry, but we're not going to blame China on this one.
It's funny because you mentioned LBJ. So I was looking at some of his quotes around the time to see how they link, because everybody knows the Vietnam War as being a war that just lasted forever and really achieved nothing. I mean, that's generally the consensus that you read about.
What do you got?
And LBJ said at the time, "I know we ought not be there, but I can't get out. I just can't be the architect of surrender." And by this, he knew that the current strategy was a mistake, but he felt politically paralyzed because backing down would be like a humiliating defeat, which again links to Trump's situation. He also said, let's get somebody that wants to do something besides drop a bomb, but that can go in and take in after these damn fellas and run them back where they belong. And by that, he meant relying entirely on overwhelming American air power wasn't actually solving the unconventional ground level problem, which again links to Trump's situation, as you've described.
That's the transition from air power, rolling thunder, to the heavier use of ground forces. And both of those, of course, ultimately fail.
He also said, and this is again, LBJ's comments as president during the Vietnam War, I don't think that we can fight them 10,000 miles away from home and get anywhere in that area. It's just the biggest damn mess that I ever saw. By this, he meant trying to project military power halfway across the globe against an enemy fighting in their own backyard is incredibly difficult and likely futile, which again links to the Iran situation. And lastly, LBJ said, a man can fight if he can see daylight down the road somewhere, but there ain't no daylight in Vietnam. There's not a single bit. And by this, he meant that there was no realistic, achievable endpoint or path to victory for its military strategy. And that also links to how, like, when political pressures change. And, Trump's recent admission at the G7 that the world is about to run out of their energy reserves is a stark realization that the current strategy is hard, it has a deadline, and there's no clear solution in sight.
Yeah, it's so tragic. It's so tragic that we're essentially replaying the Vietnam War. Trump is replaying the decisions that Lyndon Johnson made and coming to very similar decisions, which is he believes, as Lyndon Johnson did, that even though the military escalation would be a likely loser on the battlefield, that loss would take months and months to play out. So there was some chance he could pull a rabbit out of a hat. But if he accepted immediate, abrupt defeat, that would totally undermine and destroy his domestic political agenda.
So I basically, before you came, I looked at the top 20 questions that the internet currently wants to know about the Iran war.
Oh, great.
And we've knocked off a few of them already.
Okay.
We've got a couple of them left.
Yeah, I love it.
One of them is, can the United States actually force the Strait of Hormuz fully open with our current strategy, or does Iran now hold lasting leverage over this critical choke point?
The answer is the United States cannot do it. And this would be an opportunity, Stephen. Could I have that map back? Let me explain. Yeah, let me show you what I think is really in the offing here. So a lot of people are wondering, what are we going to do with 8,000 ground troops? So we have somewhere around 4,500, 5,000 Marines, somewhere around 4,000 or so troops from the 82nd Airborne. What are these troops actually going to do? And I think that what President Trump is doing here, and I think we can really see this if I kind of explain this, is what we are doing is we are concentrating our forces, our naval forces here, into the Gulf of Oman. We are not moving them through the Strait of Hormuz. Our carriers are in the Gulf of Oman. And also,
guys, like I said, if you have any question, comment, jokes, or disagreements, feel free to super chat it in or Venmo, especially the naysayers. Please put your money where your mouth is. All right, guys, let's get right back into it. And make sure to double tap that screen and like the video.
So our Marine Expeditionary Unit is in the Gulf of Oman. Now, previously, these had been further away, way off the board in the Indian Ocean. We move them here closer. And this is important because these guns are guns that have range to be able to hit the shore within about 12 miles. So what are you doing with these ships, and what are you doing here is you are building a force that might be able to take a piece of territory at Charbahar, or there's a right in between Bandar Abbas and Charbahar, there is a little port town called Jask. And this would be exactly the kind of armada you would build in order to take one of those objectives, either Charbahar or Jask. And the reason that you would do it politically for President Trump is because this could possibly be a symbolic victory. You could possibly take the territory and hold it for weeks. Now, why would you be able to take the territory and hold it for weeks? It's because this is Pakistan. We haven't even shown the rest of Iran here. Tehran is over here. So maybe we want to, why don't we bring the other map here as well? So what we have done, Stephen, is we have concentrated our forces here in the Gulf of Oman. This is our carriers, our destroyers, our battleships, and they can provide some air cover here for ships that might pass.
Yeah, but they can't get too close or they're going to risk pretty much getting shot by pretty much drones. That's all Iran got to do is send a fleet of drones, and our vessels are at risk of getting hit.
Pass through the southern part here. So I'm not saying this is the only possible mission, but those Marines and the 82nd Airborne, they're not helping. They're not really there to help ships pass through the Strait of Hormuz, but they're here. Okay, at least the Marines are here.
Where?
We don't. They're somewhere in the Gulf of Oman. We don't know exactly where they are. That would not be good.
I'm just saying that because some people can't hear.
Yeah, that's right. So they're in the Gulf of Oman here, which is to the east of Hormuz. The Persian Gulf is to the west of Hormuz. So Hormuz is the true choke point between these two gulfs. And the Gulf of Oman here is then what's north of it is the southeastern coast of Iran, which is the least populated part of Iran. Iran's population is mostly up here around the word Iran.
So you're saying that the US might take a small part of Iran from here?
A small part of Iran.
With ground troops.
With ground troops, that's right. And literally hold it here in order to get a symbolic victory. And in order for Iran to knock us out, they have to redirect all of their attention to this. And this is why I don't think it's going to work, because ultimately they will do this. But in the short term, in a period of, say, a few weeks or so, there's a chance, and I say it's a low chance. I'm not trying to tell you I would advocate for this. I would not advocate for this. I'm trying to explain what these forces are doing here, because otherwise, there's no point in having these forces here.
Okay, so some questions on this then. If the US do, I guess, invade Iran from...
Capture
Iran.
One of these port towns.
From the sort of southeast here.
That's right.
This would mean that Iran have a target to kill American soldiers.
That's right.
And the cost of losing American soldiers, especially back home in America, would be tremendous.
That's right. You're talking about hundreds dead over a period of at least weeks.
And this would be just terrible politically.
That's
for boots to be on the ground and be dying in Iran.
Well, it will be divisive politically. So for people that are opposed to the war, this will make them even more opposed to the war. But for people that are supporting the war, and this is the part of the politics that I study, Stephen, it's important to understand that there's a large part of MAGA that is incredibly supportive of this war. In fact, the opinion polls...
even though MAGA said that, or Trump walked in on no new wars, especially with Iran and in the Middle East. But hey, apparently we all heard different, guys. Now they're trying to backtrack on that. Now war's good.
Tend to show that more MAGA
boots on the ground, good,
supports regime change for Iran than oppose it. So this is not like MAGA has become Tucker Carlson country or something. This is still Trump country here, and they want Trump to win. Well, what you are seeing here is that if there are troops that are killed, you are likely going to see, and you're seeing this on Fox News this morning, after 3 more died over the weekend, you're seeing a tremendous amount of support for our troops and therefore the war.
Okay, so I've got some numbers here about public support. Based on recent polling from mid-2026, the ongoing military conflict with Iran remains highly unpopular with the general American public, but support is sharply divided along political lines. Overall, roughly 27 to 34% of Americans support the war, while a solid majority of 53 to 57% oppose it. But then when you look at MAGA, It says that 77% to 85% of MAGA support the war. Those are MAGA Republicans. And only 5% to 14% of MAGA Republicans oppose the war.
That's right. So what you are seeing is the divisions in our country, which have been building for years, are still in existence with this war, and they're becoming hardened in this war. And as deaths occur, this is likely to harden the division, not shift, at least not shift much of MAGA to the anti-war position. And the reason is because just as Trump complained when President Biden pulled out from Afghanistan, this is going to be not just a loss for Trump if he pulls out. This will be viewed as an insult to the people who died. And so people will say, so if we leave, did those people die as a mistake? Was it a mistake? Were their deaths worthless? That's a hard thing. And that's one of the reasons why when troops die in war for months, this can harden support for a war, possibly even grow it. Over time. Yes, it tends to whittle down, but in the near term, deaths can actually harden support for the war. And that's a thing that most people aren't really fully grasping yet.
How real is the risk that the US will do some kind of limited ground operation with boots on the ground in Iran?
Well over 50%. I think it's bordering on 70% now. And the reasons are that, number one, the economic crisis that President Trump was trying to prevent, and therefore the economic costs that will hurt him later, is already starting to become baked in.
I mean, bro, gas prices are up, inflation went up, therefore prices went up across the board. Fruit prices went up because, well, a good amount of the fertilizer also comes out the Strait. So yeah, that's not good. Also, our farmers was already having a hard time purchasing fertilizer. Now that fertilizer prices went up, this is only going to hurt our farmers even more, and it's going to require more subsidies. Son of a bitch.
What you're hearing this morning with the Houthis closing the pipeline area around Yanbu, it's called, this port city in the Red Sea, where the 4 to 5 million barrels of Saudi oil is coming out. What that is going to do is make the economic crisis even more baked in, even more likely, unless it's immediately reversed. And even if it was immediately reversed tomorrow, that could be reversed again the next day after that. This is starting to spiral out of control because it's not just up to President Trump now to put this genie back in the bottle. President Trump can actually still can withdraw, but right now Iran has to stop the escalation. It has to let the Red Sea oil flow. It has to allow ships to flow from Hormuz. And Iran is in a mood for revenge. Iran is, there's emotions coursing through Iran, but it's not causing Iran to pull back. It's causing Iran to want revenge. And the leader's statement, the Supreme Leader's statement just of a couple of days ago, this was Saturday, 2 U.S. soldiers were tragically killed in Jordan. He called it, what the Supreme Leader did was use the phrase that he's going to deliver unforgettable lessons to America. Unforgettable lessons is the exact phrase by the Supreme Leader over the weekend. What you are seeing here, Stephen, is as we have essentially, as Iran started to shoot at ships here to try to reinforce the MOU, President Trump upped the ante. Now we're in our ninth day of bombing in a row. Now Iran is upping the ante. And Iran is upping the ante in multiple ways. It's attacking our base in Jordan, which it only rarely done since March, actually. It's now with the Houthis closing the Red Sea. And we haven't yet talked about Kuwait. And we should talk about what happened here over the weekend here in Kuwait, because this is a harbinger of what's to come, because it shows how ferocious the anger is by Iran and how hard it's going to be to stop this spiral of escalation. And that is what is one of the that's what's going to lead to President Trump thinking long and hard about putting those ground forces in, because we're not making an independent decision now.
So you said there's a 70% chance
Yes.
that troops could be put on the ground in Iran.
Yes, I think probably within the next month, maybe even shorter than that. It could even be by the end of this week.
You've shown me on the graph that you've just shown the escalation ladder, you can call it, and where we are now. What is the most probable next thing that you think happens with this war?
The biggest thing I'm worried about is a mass casualty attack against American troops or American civilians.
Where?
Against American troops in the Middle East, but I'm specifically worrying about a barrage of ballistic missiles against our naval ships in the Gulf of Oman. So Iran is showing through the targeting that it's already been doing in the last week and a half, an exquisite ability to precisely target. And we don't know for sure they're able to track the movement of our naval ships in the Gulf of Oman, or they're getting help with either from the Chinese or the Russians in doing that. But I'm specifically worried that as this escalates, they've just closed the Strait.
Reports that have already came out that does look like China and Russia is helping them with their missile targeting. So that's just me. They're getting help. And also Ukraine did stop a shipment, most likely of arms, going to from Russia to Iran. So let's not get it twisted. They are helping Iran. Of course they would. Like, why wouldn't they?
Close the Red Sea. If we keep going forward, and we'll find out if Trump will pull back or not, but if we keep going forward, one of the big things I'm concerned about this week, next week, would be an attack on a ship. And I think it would be a barrage attack. The second thing I'm concerned about is because we are now literally threatening ground occupation. That's the biggest risk factor for suicide terrorism in my 25 years of studying suicide attacks. We haven't talked about that, Stephen. And the reason we haven't talked about it is because we were pretty far away from the big risk factor of how you start a big suicide terrorist campaign. That is now changing. I've talked to my Substack about this. Glad to talk to you about it now. But I'm concerned about a mass casualty attack against Americans. This could be against an American airliner. It could be against, Americans on a commercial airliner. This could be against Americans, say businessmen in Aqaba. So you might know there have been attacks recently in Aqaba, which is this really lovely.
Apparently there's been also attacks on AI data centers that belong to Amazon as well. So yeah, businesses are already getting attacked in Kuwait, by the way.
A resort town. I've never been there. And the fact is, there are American businessmen moving all around the Middle East now to build these pipelines. And so I can imagine there being terrorist attacks against the hotels that they're staying at. The German and British embassies have just ordered their evacuation. State Department has issued an advisory over the weekend for Americans to start leaving the region. But I'm concerned about terrorist attack because threatening or actually doing ground controlling pieces of homeland territory is the biggest risk factor for suicide terrorism. That's what causes people more than anything else to strap on bombs to kill others while they're killing themselves. So before we explain in detail, so when you say, Stephen, what I'm looking for in the next few weeks,
they do it out of desperation and fighting for their country. They don't really do it because, oh no, they're Muslims. No, they do it out of desperation to pretty much stop the invaders. It's kind of what people have been doing since throughout time. Like bro, Japanese kamikaze. Everybody forgot about that, and there's really no religious any tone in that. It's just the defense of their country they want to crash out about. Quite literally, crash out.
I'm seeing the spiral of escalation now.
Like I said, it ain't got nothing to do with religion. So all this, oh no, it's all about Islam, it's the ideology. No, it's all about the defense of their country. Trust me, if our country was ever in danger at that magnitude, we'd probably be doing the same thing.
Occurring. It's a two-sided spiral. It's not just President Trump. Iran is escalating here as much as Trump, if not more. And in this spiral of escalation, there could be a mass casualty attack, either against our troops or against American civilians. And the American civilian attack could be anywhere in the world. It could be in Indonesia. It could be London. It could be anywhere. And if that mass casualty event happens, I think what you're going to see is that this is likely going to cause that division we just discussed here in America, support for the war, to harden even more. And you're going to get, though, intense support for continuing the war now to stop mass casualty attacks by Iran in the future.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor, become part of the fifth.
And all right, guys, let's go ahead and get on into the next video here. Whoop.
By Senator Chris Van Hollen.